anything. So my talk in English is called You Are Your Future, Opportunities Unlimited. If I had been speaking in German, I prefer the title. It's You Are Your Future, Lebenslust statt Lebensfrust. So translators, you're welcome. That's what it actually means. Because young people very often feel that they actually can't do anything because it's all been done. In the age of today, very many young people are feeling challenged by the fact that they're expected to reach goals that they feel have already been reached, and what can they do new? Unless it's in the digital world, and not all of us can be the boss of Facebook or Instagram or bring up something, fantastic that'll give them millions and millions of US dollars. So, when I was preparing for this talk, I compared, because obviously you can see I come from Africa, I'm a woman, so I studied in Germany, as you were told, but when I was studying in Germany, one of the challenges I got was that people defined me because I was an African and because I was a woman. And the definition of me was a definition that was very concerned about me. Because in Africa, women basically are the ones who carry the yoke of our continent and who are the ones who are oppressed and the ones who suffer. So I carry this yoke. So as an African, I take on this subject from that point of view to ask, how do I start? When I want to be my future, what is my starting point? How do I determine what happens in my life? And as I was researching, because we're talking about young people, because those are the ones I work with, the definition that came up was lost generation. Yes? Lost generation. And I kind of was a bit surprised. Oh, okay, lost generation. Let's find out why the African youth are considered to be endangered to be the lost generation. Then I thought of another expression, which is used very much in the West, the millennials. You all kind of know that that's a trendy kind of expression at the moment, right? We have millennials, and there are those who don't want to be millennials, and those who are very comfortable as millennials. So I looked that up as well. What is a millennial? In comparison to what I do I have millennials among the young people I work with? And the definition I got for millennials, you're all born between, I think it's 1990-ish, late 80s to like 2014 was the definition. These are people who have a belated adulthood. Sorry, guys. That was what Wikipedia said. Belated adult, meaning that, responsibilities are not taken so serious, you're a little bit precious, and, you do a job and you really don't feel like, so you move to something else. What that means for me is not so much that you've got a belated adulthood, not so much that what the definition was also, sorry again, you're not lazy, it's just that you have too many choices. The millennials are young people who have too many choices. And what I then say, to define millennials compared to the young people I work with in rural Kenya, our young people of the same age are not millennials, and to put it bluntly, they don't have a smartphone. You know why I say they don't have a smartphone? Because they're not on Instagram, they're not on Facebook, they don't see the world, the greater, wider world, to know how many choices. They don't have internet, to know how many choices they have. So part of being your future is having choices. Part of being your future is knowing that you can decide to do or not to do. That's what, it sounds like Shakespeare, right? To be or not to be. That's what a millennial is. That is what the young people of this century have. They have choices. So, going back to Africa, the lost generation, who in my definition are not millennials, the majority, because the millennials usually come from the upper class, like I say, defined by their smartphone. So, most of African youth are not, African young people are not millennials. Why? Because they have the challenge, the continent has the challenge that although our median age is about 19, teenage, the half of the population are teenagers under the age of 19. It actually says 19.4. The majority of them the young people have the challenge of worrying about whether they'll even be employed, let alone have choices, any form of employment. So when we talk about the employment rate on the continent and we are told it's really, really high, we're saying, okay, And then when I read it up and I saw it was about 22%, I said, oh, that doesn't sound so high. I had this impression it was really, really high, more than that. But what ends up happening is that a lot of young people are not defined as being unemployed because they're selling peanuts on the street, or they're doing some other thing which is earning them maybe about $3 a day, and they're considered as being employed. So again, the lost generation, probably again because the choices are so limited and what they can do with their choices is also very limited. So they're just surviving. Most of the young people in Africa are just surviving. So what ends up happening, because no jobs are being created, not enough jobs are being created, not enough adequate jobs, because I said obviously there's the job of selling peanuts on the street, or hats or whatever it is, sunglasses. The problem that young people have, and the problem that is extended, is that our definition of youth on our continent is, I think, very different from Europe. And the first time I worked on this and found out about the definition, I was of the impression, what? Because you know how far the age of a youth goes on our continent? And it's also recognized internationally? 35. At 35, you could be, if you started early, a grandparent. 35 is still a youth? And I asked myself, how can we do this to our young people? How do we tell them that at 35 they're still youth? They've got 5 years and then they're 40, they're middle age. So what happened to being an adult? So actually our young people on our continent have the delayed adulthood, but not by choice. And I always say it's basically because we want to comfort them by telling them, don't worry, you're still a youth at 35, you'll get a job sometime, you'll become an adult at some time. That's the situation of the continent, because we're not creating jobs. We're not giving the young people the choices so that they can be equipped to have a job and also hold down a job, as in be employable, employability, because there are no jobs there. That's the bad news, okay? Let's go to the good news. The good news is that all these young people are an opportunity. People always say, oh, so many young people on the continent, that's going to be such a big problem. Already the situation of economic migration and all that sort of stuff. People get nervous. And I say it's not a bad thing, it's a good thing, because it's an opportunity. And it's an opportunity from the context of where I'm standing. What I do is to challenge the status quo. And they're starting to do it, because young people, like I said, we do have some millennials, so they have their smartphones, they know what's going on in the world. Some young people are starting to challenge the status quo. And our status quo on the African continent is dependency and passivity. We are dependent. And where does our dependency come from? It comes from a sense of entitlement, because we think we are poor. We are poor, so we have a very difficult life, and we're used to being looked after. We're dependent. So when we look to the West, we look to the Americas to get support, the support comes in the form of, yes, I said it, development aid. And it's classic development aid. You probably wonder why I bring up this topic in a forum where you're talking about, HR, about getting jobs and all that. But the problem we have on the continent is that's what defines the mentality that we have towards doing anything. Because everything that is a job means you have to be active, you have to participate, you have to do something. And many times we are caught in a situation where we don't do anything because we have been taught that when we are defined a certain way, in other words, as being poor, somebody else is going to do it for us. And I call that the gimme, gimme, gimme syndrome. Or waiting for something to happen because you can't do it for yourself. Or if I go even further and more into the present period, I have a term that I've used, if anybody has followed me in any form or shape. In July, when I was speaking to Kenyans, I called it the Gonya Gonya syndrome. Gonya Gonya, Konya Konya. Gonya Gonya is my language, which means help me, I'm bound by poverty. Do something about it. But not I do something, you do something about it. So I was blasted for that, because I was told I was disrespectful. Already as a woman, I shouldn't be saying things like that, and as a Kenyan, even less. But that is what is happening. So imagine somebody like that looking for a job. Are you going to be able to employ them? Because you're going to be delegating non-stop. It's a bottomless pit that leads to fatigue. You cannot help these people. That is what you then conclude. You cannot help the youth of Africa because they cannot do it for themselves. I'm talking about the ones who are considered the lost generation. We do have a few millennials. There is hope. But I see more hope in all of them if we tackle this problem that is at the base of what stops African young people from doing well, from demanding their rights around whether they get employed, whether they're employable, whether they're equipped to be able to join the value chain, the economic value chain. So one of the things we have to do is redefine what poverty is. On the continent, and again, Africa is not a country, because that happens a lot, especially in German, das Land. Africa is a continent, not a country, with 54 huge countries mostly, bigger than most European countries. So this continent is defined as being poor despite having all the raw materials that the world needs. It needs help from development aid. If you look at Wikipedia, when it talks about development aid, the focus is on Africa. Most examples are from Africa. So all of that, and again I said I'm speaking from my position as an African woman, is the legacy that I have, is the energy that feeds me in order to enable me to take my future into my own hands and control it. So imagine that. Imagine being told you're poor, and the reason you're poor is because you don't have running water and you don't have electricity. That is our basic definition, initial definition of poverty. Now, if you go to the Nordic countries, Sweden, Denmark, Finland, you pay a lot of money to live in a wooden, what are they called? Cabin. This is also those are cold countries as well. And you have no running water, no electricity, and you have a pit toilet, Plumsklo. And you pay a lot of money for this because it's an experience. For us, it's considered poor. It's poverty. So this is the perspective that we have on ourselves. So our mindset is that we're victims and we need to be helped, and we cannot help ourselves. Again, the problem with that is that our victim mentality is based on a sense of entitlement. Because we're poor, we could always throw in the colonial thing as well and all the other stuff that the West and the Americans did to us. We are entitled to being supported because we can't help ourselves. Because that is a message that is being fed to us for so many years. Because development aid started a long time ago, at the beginning of the 20th century. And you know what it was called? It was called colonial aid. The name just got changed. And it was to develop the countries for the colonial governments. So, what do we do about this? We can't be crying about it anymore. It's over. We have several generations of very intelligent Africans who have studied, have done all the different professions that we have in the world, and we should be able to sort it out. And I honestly believe we can. And one of the things we have to do to sort it out is redefine what poverty is. You are not poor if you do not have electricity and running water coming out of a tap, because that doesn't define your wealth. If you have 10 acres of land in the process of not having electricity, you are very, very wealthy. So we try to redefine what poverty is. We define what development aid is and what it should be. Or rather, we tell it as it is. We say, we expose it for what it is and say, it is not the right way to go about it, so long as it keeps you passive and a victim. It has to change the way it works with the communities that we are living in Africa. I speak for Africa at this point. And we have to change our mindset to stop being victims, to be active players in our lives, making the right decisions about ourselves, taking the responsibility. Only that way are we going to be in a position to improve our own lives. And I keep repeating, improve our own lives, do it for ourselves. So, among the things that need to happen for that to take place is we have to use common sense. Part of why I started my foundation was because I used to go to my rural upcountry, and I always had people begging and asking, oh, we haven't had any food, my child doesn't have school fees, and they had this impression because I was coming from the city, and don't forget my big name, I was going to save them all and make their lives better. And to me, it didn't make sense. Why should I give anybody anything when they have land and can feed themselves? Why should I give anybody anything when I have my one little girl and they have 7 children and the mother is pregnant with the 8th? It doesn't make sense. So I started having the conversation. So one of the important things I learned was the power of no. You have to learn to say no. It doesn't matter whether it's not PC. PC doesn't always make sense. PC is politically correct. Who here trusts politicians that much to give them that kind of power? PC, politically correct? What about common sense? And when you talk about no, I have a 50-50 principle with no. Because if you're able to answer or ask, if you get a no, 50% of the time you could have got a yes. If you don't say anything, you get nothing. So the 50-50% principle is talk, ask, say no, and get something out of it. That's when you start becoming active. That's when you start participating. That's what we try to teach. So the challenging this concept of gonya gonya, this is a Luo word, you can take it home with you, help me, unbind me from my poverty, take the yoke off of me, gonya gonya, konya konya. It's not a new thing, the challenging of it. We've challenged it for a while, but we continue at that pace because in many ways we still create these dependencies. But it doesn't work. Philanthropy alone, charity alone does not work. It has its place. Catastrophes, conflicts, if you're looking at Syria now, those are situations, or if you're going to boost somebody, help them along, start them off, it has its place. We as a foundation also get support. But it only goes a certain distance. The rest of the way, in order to create a space where you can become part of the economic value chain, you must move into the economic space. You must start thinking, when you interact with this continent, when you interact with these young people, you must start thinking what's in it for you and what's in it for them. That is the value. That is not being PC. That is being honest, that is being realistic, because they need to get into the job market. They need to become a part of what is going on in the mainstream. In fact, I could almost extend, but I mustn't because I'm also supported, and saying, why have a development ministry when you could put all of that into the economic ministry for finance? Because it's the same thing, guys. Why, when you're working with Africa, you're talking about help and aid and all that, and when you're working with China and you're working with Sweden or France, you're talking about economic trade agreements and all that? It's the same thing. And especially for Africa, because that's where you get all your natural minerals. That's where you get all your resources from. And in the back office, you are trading with Africa. And our young people need to know this. They need to know that there's a very, very active economic trade going on between the West and Africa. We need to stop hiding that and saying, oh, these are just economic immigrants. You take the guys from Ghana. The gold is being mined there, they're being paid peanuts, and the gold is coming here, and then you're telling them they can't come to Europe? But they have no jobs because they're not earning enough. That's why they're running away. So we need to reconnect. What is happening globally? What is the wealth of our universe, and how is it being distributed? I know I sound naive. Nobody wants to hear that anymore. But I need to talk about it because the young people I work with need a space to get jobs, real jobs, that pay them real salaries, that give them enough that they can maintain their families, put a roof over their children's head, educate their children, and also look after their medical care. That's the conversation we're supposed to be having. That's why I do the work I do. So it has to become mainstream economic development. I go even further and say it has to be sustainable mainstream economic development and growth. Because I say that you don't find us doing nothing. We already are doing something. Now we want to grow what we're doing. We want to develop what we're doing. It's very, very important to change the discourse, change the conversation, because we're cheating ourselves, right? We're cheating ourselves. We cannot be benevolent, because to be benevolent is to take out the begging bowl, gonya gonya. It is to be dependent, which means you are a victim. And you're an angry victim. That's why you feel entitled. They must help me. And you actually kind of know why. Because the gold is being sold over there, and the money is going out there, and we are getting nothing for it. Or Senegal. We're fishing away. I call myself part of it. The Western world are fishing where all the fish at the coast of Senegal. The fishermen cannot get any fish anymore. They have to go further and further, and they get harassed. So that's the reality of the economic situation that you have, within which these young people need to find a way to sustain themselves, a way to have a life, to have an existence. So we must redefine how we work with each other, so that we are not giving handouts. We enable, and the people can support themselves. They can take the opportunities for themselves to move themselves forward. So, trade, not aid. I guess for me, yes, a bit, because I'm creating the platforms. But in reality, we must move from the situation of aid towards trade. My model that I use in our foundation, I work with children between the ages of 4 to 25, is that we first start working with their minds. They have to change their mindset, which means they have to become aware of their abilities, themselves as individuals, what they can do with their lives. They have to believe they can do something with their lives, and they have to believe that they have unlimited opportunities to do that. That's what we try to show them. It's not easy because we work with rural children. First of all, they don't even know that they exist because mom has like 7 kids and she calls you Jane, and you know Jane is your sister, but you still answer because she's tired and you just want to get whatever it is she's giving you, because if you start questioning, she's like, okay, where's Jane? And then Jane gets it. So you just answer. So that's the situation there, and they don't even sense that they are important as individuals. So that's the first thing they learn. I am somebody. I have to believe in myself. And that's for all young people. In order to succeed, you must first be able to appreciate yourself. I won't talk about loving yourself. That's maybe going too far and getting all kumbaya-ish. But you must believe in yourself. You must believe that you can. Yeah? And that believing in yourself means that first you must discover yourself and know who you are. And one of the things we do to teach them to understand who they are is we tell them that they must be seen. Because very many times, especially rural young people, you find they shy away and they're cowering in the corner and they're not talking, so you don't really see them. So what we do is we tell them, you must be seen. We do a lot of activities around being seen. You must be heard. So you must hear your voice. We must hear your voice. So we have public speaking, we do sports, all these different activities to make them aware of themselves and who they are as individuals, the flesh and blood of who they are. It's very basic, but it's very, very important. They must realize that they have potential. So what we call that is the fire inside here that makes you motivated, want to do things, kills your fear of doing, because we all have it. We're like, oh, I can't do that, it's not me. But you must wake it up. Get that fire out there, and you must take responsibility. And taking responsibility means that you don't blame anybody. I always say in the West, we have this thing of, my mom and dad didn't hug me enough, so these things are not working for me, etc. In Africa, we don't have that because we don't really do that hugging thing and, whatever. And like I said, Jane is the 6th sister, and you're being called Jane, and you still go ahead and take it because somehow you know mom loves you. And anyway, you've got to get on with it because it's your life. So young people are meant to take responsibility for their lives. But taking responsibility is also sometimes difficult because maybe your parents have a plan A and you have a plan B. You want to do something else, but mom and dad want you to be a doctor, an architect, a lawyer. And we tell them that, yes, they might want you to do that, and you are in their home, they're paying your fees, etc., so you have to do it. But if in your head you have a plan B, it means that you're free. So I always say, in your head, you're free. So you might go and become that doctor. You might become that lawyer. We know stories of people who go and get that degree and hand it over to the parents and say, yes, I've done it. Here's the degree. Now I'm going to become a rapper. It's possible. Plan B. I didn't think I was going to do what I'm doing. I studied to teach at the university. But I just had this thing that was driving me, and I kept going, and now I'm here doing what I did. When I first studied in Germany, my father asked me, what are you going to do in Germany? Okay, I'm going to study German studies, language, linguistics. And he says, why that? And I'm like, why not? He says, you know what? In Germany, every drunk under the bridge speaks German. Now what? So he didn't kind of take it seriously. He was like, jeder Penner unter der Brücke spricht Deutsch. Na und? That was basically what he told me. So it got me thinking, why am I doing this? What is the motivation? So that's the other thing young people must learn, to ask why and stand by the answer to their why. That is very, very important. So we teach you to know yourself, understand yourself, and also appreciate yourself. And once you do that, then we take that fire and say, do something with it. Go to school, stay in school. And the quality of your education is important, so we do tuition. And then what we say is, you don't have to sit in an office and have a white-collar job. You can also use your hands. Informal education. Handwerk. Even in Germany, to find a good plumber, electrician is really, really difficult because there's so much fewer. Because young people don't want to do this. But guess what? Can I say it? We all use the bathroom. We all shower, and we all need certain things that a computer cannot do. So you guys who are refusing to do these jobs, it is so lucrative. They are the ones that, the future people are going to make a lot of money. So you need to encourage young people to start using their hands. And it's creative. It is really creative because you make things by yourselves. So we encourage the young people to use their hands to do the informal work as well as the formal education. Then we also go into the deepness of what it is to redefine poverty. Realistically, appreciate what you have. Use what you have to get what you need. The first thing you have is yourself, your intellect. Then beyond that, you have others. How can we use, in a positive way, other people to help us promote ourselves, to make us improve our lives? Get mentorship, listen to people. Don't be so cool, so millennial cool, that you can't listen to anybody. You can't tell me anything, I know it all. We don't, none of us do. I continue to learn. And we have to appreciate that and be humble enough to learn from others. That is a resource, apart from yourself. The other resource is what you have around you. In my situation, the young people, the families have land. It is valuable. So we teach them to appreciate, first be aware of its value and appreciate it. If I was talking to young people in Germany, because we also work in Germany, I tell them their resource is the services they get. I mean, we wonder as Africans when we're in Europe that schooling is free. You know, there's so many things that are free. It's like, oh my God. And kids don't want to go to school. Kids are complaining. In our part of the world, everybody is dying for sponsorship, is lining up to get somebody to pay their school fees. So you appreciate, because those are the resources that are going to help you succeed. And you must become aware of them, because I think sometimes people feel really, this idea of feeling too cool to do certain things, you have to look far, far further than that day or that week or that month or that year, or those friends who are telling you, you can't be doing that. Because if you really follow your plan A or plan B, because plan A may be also your plan, you really must do what you feel in your tummy, in that fire that burns there, that is the right thing for you to do. And that's what we try and teach the children. And in order to make all of that possible, we create enabling places, which is unusual for a foundation, because normally when you run a foundation and you're looking for money, they tell you, oh, we don't pay for buildings, we don't really pay for education, we pay for, we'll get them some sports stuff, we'll do some this, we'll do this. And I say, you know what? In order to really complete the work we do, we need to create physical and mental spaces where the young people can come and realize their potential. When it comes to the mental spaces, it's about speaking. It's about being listened to. It's about being appreciated so that you can realize your potential, so that you can get that voice. Our foundation is called Sauti Kuu, Powerful Voices in Kiswahili. And that space has to be safe and unthreatening. So we create physical spaces. And the physical spaces, another thing, I always make a joke and say it's because I'm a woman, is that they have to be pretty. They have to look nice. Because we take these children, they're living in compounds where everything is a mess, the families are, it's really living, they've got jiggers, they've got lice, what have you, and they're living in the slums, they don't have any toilets. We have something called a flying toilet. You just do your business in a plastic bag, swing it around, throw it, and where it lands, that's your toilet. So we try to give them a space where it's beautiful, where what I call it, where they can exhale. Because if you've got all these negative, ugly things going on around you, you cannot be creative. You cannot have a positive thought of mind in order to do anything. So we create those spaces. And basically what we do by that, because we work with disadvantaged children and young people, is we give them a break. We give them a break and tell them, okay, stop a minute, exhale, and figure out what you want to do with your life. How wonderful is that? How many of us would like a break? Even us adults who are already working. How many times have I thought, I wish somebody could just give me a break so I can just stop and think, do I really want to do what I'm doing? How many times do we stop? I was coming here now from Frankfurt, and we're thinking about where are the places in Germany that you get the feeling that the people take a break? And you know what we came up with? Oktoberfest and Kölner Festival. Because that's where the people just stop for a week and say, we're not going to work. We're taking a break. I mean, it's a crazy break because most people just get drunk and don't remember. So that's not the point, of taking a break. But it's about being able to say, I'm exhaling for a minute. And that's the space we create without the alcohol. That's the space we create for young people because you need it. Because it's scary. Looking at your life and figuring out what you want to do with your life is scary. And many young people don't know what the opportunities are, what the possibilities are, what you can do. You can get up here and be a clown and earn money. We had an event in July where we had breakdancers come and perform from Germany, Bavaria, in Lederhosen and the whole lot, doing the Schuhplattler thing. And the kids were like, yeah, they earn their money doing that. So they were like, oh, wow, okay, that's a thought. So now we're all breakdancing because we all think we're going to make big money breakdancing. But it's opportunities. It's making it possible. You can create your own jobs. And that's the great thing about today because you can learn everything on YouTube. If you want to do something, you just go on YouTube and you figure it out and you learn it. So you create your own job. So with all of that, we're teaching the young people to not be dependent, not aid, but trade, to be part of the economic value chain, and also to share the responsibility and the accountability for what happens to them, what happens to their environment, to be able to partner on an equal level, to be able to talk, not be PC, about what is possible for them. And this dialogue, like I say, is on, as they say in German, auf Augenhöhe, eye to eye. Meaning that, and what I say, a saying of mine, is that don't give us fish. Don't teach us how to fish. Ask us if we eat fish. That is a conversation we need to be having. That is a conversation we need to be having with our young people, with ourselves, to figure out what is it I want. Am I fitting into a box, or can I be the person who makes the size of the box that I want to get into? That's what we try to do. So Sautiku strives, the model strives to ensure that poverty is not an excuse. It gives young people opportunities to realize their potential, and this potential shows them that their opportunities are unlimited. They can actually do whatever they want. They will be employable, or they can be employed. Because the problem is very many times our young people are not employable because they don't think creatively. And by doing that, we give them financial stability. So the result of all of what we do is creating a space where the socio-economic growth and development of these young people is assured, and they can be employed. So I'm not going to say that what I do gives people jobs. Definitely not, because it's very hard. We don't give the jobs, but we create a space where the young people become able to make choices. If you have a voice, you have a choice. Make choices about what they want to do and not be afraid to grab opportunities. How many times do we miss an opportunity because we are afraid? We tell them not to be afraid because opportunities are unlimited and they can do whatever they want. They can be whoever they want. And this we do with children in the rural area of Western Kenya that are living in what they think is abject poverty because they have no running water and no electricity. So when I have a lot of money one day, I will take them all to the north of Europe and have them stay in one of these Nordic cabins. Thank you very much.